Should you merge or rebase, fast forward or not? If Git has ever confused you, well, you're not alone. Today I'll take you through a real-world Git example using FastAPI. We'll see exactly how branching, merging, rebasing, fast forwarding works step by step and what the pros and cons of each approach are. I'll be using GitKraken to show more of these things. They're also the sponsor of today's video. Now, let's dive in. Before we start, I'm going to create a folder and initialize a Git repository there. Now I have my folder, I'll just create a new Git repository and I'm going to use the main branch. The example that I'm using today is a FastAPI project that just has a simple hello world endpoint. I've copied the code right here. As you can see, this is really straightforward. I'm using UV to manage this project, so let's start the server and see what it does. And as you can see, when I open a browser on my local host, this works as expected. Now, next to this basic setup, I've also created a separate folder called tests that contains a basic unit test for this endpoint. So the only thing I'm doing here is creating a test client from the FastAPI library, importing the app, set up that test client, and then have a test hello function that does a GET request and then checks that we get a status code 200 and that the response is hello world. Here I have the local repository open in GitKraken. As you can see, the files of this project have not been added and committed yet. So let's do that as a first step. So I'm going to stage the changes and then I'm going to add a short message. Like so. In GitKraken, you can now visually see what's happening with your Git repository. So this commit is right here. Now let's say you want to add a goodbye endpoint. Instead of working directly on the main branch, the idea is to create a feature branch. Now you can do that with the Git CLI as follows, but you can also do it in GitKraken to create the branch. In that case, it's really simple. Just click branch and then I'm going to enter the branch name. Like so. And now there is my feature/goodbye branch. So now let's modify the main file to add the goodbye endpoint, like so. And then let's also create a test for that while we're at it. And as you can see, GitHub Copilot already generates this code for me, which is great. So it's basically the same as test hello, except we're testing the goodbye endpoint. Let me save that. And let me run the test. And we see that both of these tests pass. Now when I run the server again, we see that hello world still works as expected. And the goodbye endpoint also works. Now that you go back to GitKraken, you see that there is a new work in progress point here. So what we can do is then take a look at these files that I've changed. And as you can see, there are two files. There is the main file and the test, which are the two files that I modified. So I'm going to stage those and I'll add a commit message here. And let me commit that. So now you can see that the feature branch has departed from the main branch. And I can easily switch back between the feature branch and the main branch, like just by double clicking on it. And then you can also see if I go back to my code, now the goodbye endpoint is gone again. So let me go back to this feature branch and you see there we have it back. So that's how you switch between branches in GitKraken. So now the question is, how do you make sure that this new feature ends up on the main branch? So you could use a simple merge to do this. If you're using the Git CLI, this is what that looks like. And this creates a merge commit. It keeps both branches' histories. What you do in GitKraken is that you can basically drag this over to the main branch and that's going to merge it or fast forward it or rebase it. So we have some different options here. And I'm going to talk about these options more in a minute. But for now, let's just do a merge. Now, as you can see, this feature branch is actually still there. It still exists. And we are still on the feature branch. Let me switch back to the main branch. And now you see what happened is that here we were still on the main branch. We created a feature branch that kind of created this little sidetrack here. And then the main branch continued and then we merged these two and now I can start working again on the main branch if I want to. So the commit history as you can see here, still has that feature branch. So what's nice about this is that with a simple merge like this, you have a clear record of how these branches were combined. You can actually go back to, what actually happened in the various branches. So you can also track more easily which features were integrated when. Now, the disadvantage of this approach is that your history can actually get quite messy if you have many of these merge commits, many different feature branches existing at the same time. But there are ways in Git to simplify this by using other features such as rebasing or fast forwarding. Let me show you how that works. So let's say I'm going to add another feature, the possibility to add a name to the goodbye endpoint. So let's create another branch called feature goodbye name. And now I'm going back into my code and I'm going to write a name argument here, which has a default value of world, like so. And then I'm going to turn this into an F string, like so. Let's also add a test. There we go. And let me run PyTest again. We see that all the tests pass. And I just want to start the app again to see if that actually works. So here I have my browser. And now I'm going to add a name, Arjan. And that works as expected. Great. So now again, I have my work in progress here. So I'm going to view the changes. Main and the test have been modified. So now I'm going to add name option to goodbye endpoint. These are on a stage, and let me commit that. So now I have those again on the feature branch. Now we have the situation where the main branch is right here, and we have this single feature branch that basically continued off the main branch. So if this is your situation, if there's no new commits on the main branch, which is the case here, then Git can actually fast forward the branch. And that means that it basically moves main forward without doing an actual merge commit. So now when I drag over this feature branch to the main branch, like so, you see that I have fast forward main as an option here. So let me do that. And now you see that actually the feature branch, it still exists. The main branch, it still exists, but they are at the same point. So there is no separate path here anymore like we had right here with the normal merge. So that's what fast forward does. It means that if this is your standard way of merging, of taking the main branch and moving it up to your feature branch, then you maintain a nice linear history because the commits have basically been directly applied onto the main branch. So this is pretty nice, especially if you're doing pretty small independent changes. It keeps the history clean. However, it's no longer clear which commit belongs to which branches or features that you developed in the past because we just have this single path going from here to here. We don't have this little line appearing here showing me, in this particular feature branch, I did this. The issue is that fast forward doesn't work if there are new commits on the main branch while you worked on your feature branch. So let's say we create yet another feature branch that renames the goodbye endpoint function. Like so. And I'm going to call this goodbye name, like so. Let me stage that change, and actually, I don't think I need to change anything in the test. Let's just run PyTest just to be sure. No, that's not needed. And now let's rename the goodbye function. And I'm going to commit those changes to my new feature branch. But now let's say we go back to the main branch and someone else, my dark alter ego, decides that it's a great idea to add the name option that I had in my main file or in the goodbye endpoint. And they also want to add it to the hello endpoint. So let me copy this over like so. And then this is going to be an F string. And then this is going to be a name. And let's say that I go back to my GitKraken, that this person actually worked directly on the main branch. So I'm going to stage those changes. Added name argument to hello. And now I'm going to commit those. So what happened now is that this was previously where my main branch was at when I created this feature branch. And then I did some modification and committed that. So at the same time, someone else worked on the main branch and committed some change, namely that I added this name argument to hello. And now this is all me, but you can imagine that there's different team members that work on different branches in your code, and this can definitely happen. Now the problem is if I now try to merge these things, so if I drag this feature branch over to the main branch, you see that fast forward is no longer an option. And that's because there have been changes to the main branch since I made this feature branch. So in this case, rebasing is a great option. What happens when you rebase is that the commits that you did to your feature branch are temporarily removed. So basically history is rewritten. So the first step in rebasing is to actually remove this particular commit right here. Then the feature branch is moved to the latest main, and then the temporarily removed commits are reapplied to that. Let's see what happens when I do this in GitKraken. So I'm going to move this feature branch over to the main branch, and I'm going to rebase this. So now it says that to start rebase, I need to check out the branch feature new goodbye. Do you want to do this now? Yes, I do. And now you can see that things have changed here. Actually, what happened now is that we still have this main branch here, but the feature to rename the goodbye function is now applied again onto the feature branch that is created from the latest main branch. So that's what it looks like now. You can also see in the code it actually has combined these things. So I have my hello world endpoint that has the name argument, and have my goodbye endpoint that also has the name argument. And now that we have this, we can simply do a fast forward again so that main moves up to my latest feature branch, like so. And now this is again a stable situation where we have a nice clean history, and the main branch is currently synced with the feature branch that I did before. Or of course, if you want to preserve history, you could have also done a normal merge instead of a fast forward. So the nice thing about rebasing is that there are no extra merge commits. It typically leads to more clean, readable solution because you can just do a fast forward merge after you've done a rebase, like I've showed you. But there are also cons, like you're rewriting history, and that can actually cause issues. For example, let's say somebody makes a modification to a function that you also worked on in your feature branch, and then you're going to have a conflict while you're rebasing, and you have to solve these one by one. Now, GitKraken has a nice feature called interactive rebase that makes this process a lot easier. In short, merging preserves history, but it can look messy. Fast forward keeps history clean and minimal, but only works if main hasn't changed. And rebase rewrites the past, but like I said, you may have to deal with conflicts. Next to what I've shown you already, GitKraken has lots of other features ranging from better code change suggestions, managing active pull requests, visualizing how pull requests are merged into your repositories with GitKraken Insights. If you're thinking about trying GitKraken, all the tools are free to download and get started. If you use my referral link, you get 50% off your first seat of GitKraken Pro. So it's only $4 a month. Plus, when you sign up through my link, you help support my channel. There's no catch, just an awesome DevX platform at a discount. The link's in the description if you want to check it out. The system I use today for adding features has a name. It's called GitFlow. GitFlow is a branching strategy for managing feature development, releases, and hotfixes in a structured way. That's basically what you saw when I named my feature branch feature slash. And if you would have a hotfix, it would be called hotfix slash. GitFlow is natively included in GitKraken, and you can enable it in the settings right here. So if I scroll down, I can go to my GitFlow settings and then do an initialize GitFlow. And now as you can see, there is this extra menu item here called GitFlow, where I can do things like look at the various features. I can also open GitFlow and then create with a new feature or release or a hotfix. And this is already going to apply the right naming automatically, which is nice. So another thing that you see here, and that's also a standard part of GitFlow, is that you have your main branch, which is what we had before, but you will also have a develop branch. That's going to be the branch that you use to integrate new features before you actually release it. And then you have these feature branches. So these are the ones that I created in the example today. Then you can also have release branches. So these are for final testing before deployment. And you can even have hotfix branches that are urgent bug fixes you do on the main branch. Now, if you don't want to work with all these different types of branches and following a standard like this, then a good alternative is trunk-based development. But that's not a magic bullet, as you'll see in a minute. Now, with trunk-based development, the idea is that you basically always work off a single branch, but you enable and disable features using feature flags. The idea behind this is that you always work on the main code. and that you're therefore running a way lower risk of deviating too much from the main branch, which means you have to resolve a bunch of merge conflicts. Now, the problem is, of course, that you are working off the main branch. And that means that you're going to need to write unit tests in order to make sure that everything is working correctly. So unit tests are a really good and necessary mechanism that helps you make sure that the code you write doesn't break things. For example, let's say you want to put a feature flag around this goodbye endpoint that we wrote. So I can do this in a very simple way. Let's say I make a constant called feature goodbye, and I'm going to set that to false. And then you can add your feature goodbye check right here. And now I've basically created this feature flag where I can enable and disable a particular feature simply by changing this constant value here. I can commit this code. If I make sure that this is set to false, this is not going to show up in production. It won't be there. Of course, I also have to make sure that the test actually reflects that. So in this case, I would also import the feature goodbye. And then these two tests are only done if feature goodbye is actually set true. And now when I run a PyTest, you're going to see that I just have one test. But as soon as I enable the feature, I have my 3 tests back again. So now that means as long as we make sure that this is false, then we can safely work on this endpoint without having to worry that it breaks the rest of the API. But this approach only works when this feature is relatively separate from the rest. I mean, let's say you want to change the hello world endpoint to include an option to make the greeting more formal. Let me clean that up a bit. So when you add this, it's relatively easy to add a unit test to make sure that this works as expected. But unfortunately, there is no easy way to disable this formal argument. Now you could, for example, override this and make sure that it's always set to false. So it will always still have the original behavior in this case. But actually, it's going to be more complicated if you generate your API docs based on function signatures, because then the formal argument is going to show up. So you're going to have to do work to remove it again. Or alternatively, what you're going to need to do is to actually maintain 2 versions of the same code. So you might want to have a feature formal, like so. And then if feature formal, then this is going to be the function, else. And then we just have our regular hello endpoint. But now you see there are already some issues, like there is a double function declaration, which, well, is not really a problem because it's in the if statement. But we have now duplicated code here because we needed some code to separate these 2 versions of my feature branches. So the trade-off here is that this works, but it can also quickly become very complicated and much harder to read your code. So in my opinion, GitFlow is still a valid way of managing your development process, especially if you're working on code that needs lots of changes all over the place. But what do you think? Do you use feature branches in GitFlow? Do you use trunk-based development? Do you use some combination of both? Let me know in the comments. I hope this video helped you improve your Git game and gave you a better understanding of the different ways in which you can create and merge branches. Now, if you enjoyed this video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel. It's a small thing, but it really helps me reach more people on YouTube. Thanks again to GitKraken for sponsoring this video. Like I said, check them out using the link in the video description. It's a really great way to up your Git game. If you want to learn more advanced Git features, including a really cool one that allows you to check out multiple branches at once, watch this video next. Thanks for watching and see you next time.